Start with the quarterbacks and the ones that are on a bye. The biggest one is Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Those quarterbacks not going to help you in week number 10. Some people may argue that Lamar Jackson hasn't been helping you very much the last few weeks, especially what he did Monday night. Not a huge game against the Saints. No Zach Wilson, no Mac Jones as well. The players you should be adding at the quarterback position. This isn't exactly the most exciting list, but Jimmy Garoppolo has played well of late. We'll talk about him in a second. Hopefully Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones coming off their bye weeks can help you with their respective matchups against the Titans and the Texans. Deshaun Watson, now's the time to be stashing him for when he's able to return in Week 13. And Case Keenum's a desperation play, but those of you in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues might need a replacement for Josh Allen, and that might be somebody you should be targeting. Let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. So 4 straight games of 20-plus fantasy points. And the one that's the most interesting to me is his last game against the Rams when he scored 20 points against a team that has been just absolutely dominant against opposing quarterbacks. He's facing a team in the Chargers this week that has been pretty dominant against opposing quarterbacks. Only 2 have gone over 20 fantasy points against them this season. So is Jimmy Garoppolo, with all of his weapons, Deebo Samuel back, a must-start fantasy quarterback this week?
Must start is a little strong, but he's a top 12 quarterback for me. He's just outside the top 10. I've got him 11th. I think that he's absolutely got a chance given the weapons that San Francisco has and given the weaknesses just in general for this Chargers defense. I think you could see him end up being, I don't know what that look was for.
Look where he has him ranked, number 7.
Wow, I'm going to stop talking because I want to hear this.
This is not me pushing Jimmy Garoppolo up past 20 to 21 fantasy points. This is the entire quarterback landscape completely crumbling around him. I've got him projected for 21 fantasy points like he's done most of the last month. It's just that everyone else is terrible or has an awful matchup. You've got Kirk Cousins against the Bills. You've got Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers.
The Bills still the Bills, though?
No.
Well, it depends.
I don't think so.
Well, who's healthy this week?
For
We don't
Buffalo,
know.
half their starting defense could be out. That's a good thing for Kirk Cousins.
None of them been ruled out, though.
For now,
It is also,
Cousins takes
as our buddy
advantage.
Pete Prisco will say, a big game
big
for
game.
Kirk. You know, Rick Spielman would argue that because he doesn't think that out-of-division games, out-of-conference games are big. But it was a fun conversation between those 2 guys. In any event, we'll see what Kirk Cousins shows up. I would start Cousins over Garoppolo, but I see where you're getting at.
Right.
You just think he's going to have a safe floor.
Yeah, Herbert's got no. If Herbert has receivers, and I'd move him ahead of him. There's a couple of different situations, but yeah, he's 7 to 10 range. With those weapons, I don't know if it matters how good the defense is. With Deebo, with McCaffrey, with Kittle, with Ayuk,
The only counter would be is you can run all over the Chargers, and this could be the let's get McCaffrey going on the ground game potentially. Maybe Elijah Mitchell plays. I don't know. I could see it going where they just decide they're going to run some more. Even Deebo running as well. So Garoppolo, we'll see if he's in that 18-point range or the 20-point range. But obviously, you're very optimistic. Russell Wilson has a 1 game over 19 fantasy points on the season, taking on a Titans team that, as we've seen at times, they've given up production to quarterbacks. It's been a little fluky in some cases, like Patrick Mahomes throwing 68 times and having to do a lot with his legs to get to where he got you last week. You see we're kind of a little all over the place. Heath, I'll go to you again. You're the high guy on Russell Wilson.
I think the hope is he comes back off the bye and either the hamstring injury or the lat injury's healed. Maybe both of them are healed. Maybe he's got a little bit better connection with this offense and with his wide receivers, and we see a little bit more of old Russell Wilson, not old Russell Wilson, in the second half of the season.
We saw it in the second half of their game against Jacksonville. He started to play a little bit better. They got Greg Dulcich a little bit more involved. It wasn't good for Cortland Sutton, but it was really good for Russell Wilson. He looked like his old self, and he's had flashes of some good play this year and some of those improvisational plays that he makes. I'm okay with the matchup against the Titans because they have allowed a bunch of games, 22-plus, to quarterbacks, 5 of their last 7. So I don't mind taking the chance on him. I think he's got a lower floor than Garoppolo, than Brady, maybe even lower than Stafford this week too.
Stafford has a great matchup against the Cardinals. They've allowed 24 or more fantasy points to 3 quarterbacks in a row in 4 of the last 5. So we'll see what happens there for Stafford. In terms of Daniel Jones, I think it's going to come down to how much you trust him to run in this matchup. And so Sportsline, very excited about Daniel Jones. You see here, we're not like all in on all these quarterbacks aside from Garoppolo, but in the games where Daniel Jones has used his legs, 3 games with 67 or more yards on the ground, in those 3 games, he's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So if he runs, similar to like we saw from Justin Fields, similar to what we get sometimes for Kyler Murray, from Lamar Jackson, the rushing number is going to support him. Last time we saw him, though, Week 8 against Seattle, he did not run, only 20 rushing yards in that game. We were excited about him then. He disappointed us. So just keep that in mind when it comes to Daniel Jones. And again, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, stash him now just in case down the road you might need him. When it comes to the quarterbacks you could be moving on from, there's only one that I listed for today, and it's a big one. And his name is Aaron Rodgers. It's time to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Unless you guys disagree, I just can't buy it. It's now 4 games in a row with under 20 fantasy points. He's maxed out at 20 fantasy points on the season. He just threw 3 interceptions against Detroit, and now he gets Dallas. Sticking with him or getting rid of him?
Oh, I'm getting rid of him. And another reason why I'm getting rid of him, his receiving core is depleted with Romeo Dobbs not there, and I can't believe that that's actually a factor that hurts Aaron Rodgers, but it is. And his schedule, Dallas, Tennessee, Philadelphia, those are his next 3 games. Maybe that Tennessee game, he's got a chance to get you 19 or 20 fantasy points. That's where he's lived pretty much all season long. The only time I'm going to be interested in using Aaron Rodgers again is going to be week 13 against the Bears. And even then, I'm not sure how much I'll really love him there because he always seems to crush Chicago.
Let him go. I got every streamer that we listed on the screen above. I would rather start this week. Taylor Heineke has a terrible matchup. I'd rather start him again this week. They're not good. And I think Pete completely wrote them off and said they're done on Monday. He's done for fantasy purposes as well.
It's hard to trust. And, again, maybe that Week 13 game, maybe the stretch run gets better for him, but no help in the receiving core. Maybe Christian Watson changes some things, but it's hard to expect that at this point. Just a very disappointing season for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Let's transition now to the running backs, the ones on a bye. Joe Mixon's the big one, Ramondre Stevenson as well. You also don't have Michael Carter for the Jets, and then the Ravens guys of Kenyon Drake and Gus Edwards. The running backs that you're looking to add this week, buckle up because this is an interesting list. You have the Colts guys at the top. The only reason I listed Jordan Wilkins is because the potential of him getting the majority of the touches in a decent matchup against the Raiders. So we'll see again, Jeff Saturday, the new interim head coach, if his influence on the offensive line can help, but at least you know that there's a chance for one of Wilkins or Moss. At this point, I'm going to lean toward Wilkins being the lead running back, getting volume, could be a flex play. None of these guys really are must-start running backs if they do get the opportunity to start. Hubbard might be the closest, depending on what they think of Deontay Foreman. But you see here the 2 Broncos guys that are available, Latavius Murray and Chase Edmonds, and then some potential handcuff options, Elijah Mitchell, Kenneth Gainwell, Jerick McKinnon, and Isaiah Spiller. Let's start with the Colts conversation here again. So Jordan Wilkins, Zach Moss, Heath, when you look at these 2 guys, is there one that you think has the chance to be better than the other? And would you be targeting them off the waiver wire first if you need a running back?
I would lean towards Jordan Wilkins as being the best. Yeah, I would target Chuba Hubbard first. I think I'd rather start Latavius Murray over Jordan Wilkins. He's right around RB 30 for me. Not that far from someone like Jerick McKinnon in full PPR. I think it's a similar situation. The thing I would say is if you're going after one of these guys, even if you're desperate for a running back, we just showed a list of 10 guys. They all might rank within 10 spots of each other, from 29 to 38 at running back. Do not put a lot of fab or priority on one of these guys. There's not that big a difference.
I don't want to trust the Colts running back because the offensive line and the whole scheme in general, it's really looked bad since week 2. So I don't think that there's a guy, and we've seen Jordan Wilkins before, man. He's not that great of a running back. Zach Moss is interesting, but the only area or the only team that I would stash Zach Moss is one of those deep leagues that I talked about earlier in the show where 14 teams and 6 bench spots, and he's already gone in those kinds of leagues. I like Rachaad White a lot. I think that he could eventually start to be even closer to a 50-50 split with Leonard Fournette in Tampa Bay. They need to figure out their run game. I think he's got a little bit more explosiveness than Fournette.
All right, let's talk about White because it's an interesting matchup against Seattle, but still Leonard Fournette is there. Now, Tom Spencer, who joins us every Sunday, he's in the booth with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. He said that they were going to give White more work in tandem with Leonard Fournette. He had his most carries on the season with 8. But still, he's the backup behind Leonard Fournette. And so the reason why I would lean toward the Colts guy over this is because you're probably looking at maybe 15 touches for one of the Colts guys as opposed to 7 or 8 for Rachaad White. I feel like I'd rather take my chance with volume.
Well, and it's not like we have any reason to expect someone carrying the ball for Tampa Bay to be efficient.
It's the worst rushing offense in the Super Bowl era.
They can't run. They do it very rarely, and when they do, they pick up 3 yards per pop. So I'm not particular. I think you're going to end up still starting Leonard Fournette because of what the potential is for catches, the potential is for touchdowns. I'm not ready to go to Rachaad White unless he's actually the lead back.
White is a great stash candidate because should something happen
Mm-hmm.
to Fournette, then he's getting all the work there. So if you need a starter for this week, no. If you need somebody just to put on your bench, yes, that's an absolute situation you want to look at. All right, you mentioned Latavius Murray, Heath. Murray, Edmonds, we don't know how it's going to look.
No.
So they add Edmonds during their bye week via trade from Miami. Murray, 2 of the last 3 games, 15 total touches. He scored in 2 of his last 3 games. But Melvin Gordon's still there, and now Edmonds is there. Give me the breakdown in your mind of the split.
What I don't think Edmonds is going to impact is the short yardage carries. I don't think he's going to impact the red zone, and I don't think they trust Melvin Gordon with the fumbling problems he's had there. So I feel relatively confident that Latavius Murray, who scored 3 touchdowns in his 4 games with the Broncos, will hold on to that role. I also think he's going to lead them in rush attempts. That's less clear, but I think you're looking at somewhere 12 to 15 touches and the best chance of all the Broncos running backs to score a touchdown.
It's really what it comes down to.
Tough matchup, though.
It is, but when you start Latavius Murray, you're hoping that he plops into the end zone. That's really what he can do. And if you're starting Chase Edmonds, I think it's a humongous risk because you don't know how many 3rd down or passing down plays he's actually going to have. He's kind of hinted that that's what he's there to do and that's his starting point, but that still could mean like 5 or 6 PPR points. Remember, he wasn't that great with Miami. This is a completely different system for him. I'm not excited about Chase Edmonds.
But he has had time to learn the system, and again, we know that they've been very frustrated with Gordon. Who knows how comfortable they fully are with Latavius Murray, or it was just by necessity that they were using Latavius Murray. So we have no idea if this was we're throwing in Chase Edmonds in the Bradley Chubb deal, or we really want Chase Edmonds as part of the Bradley Chubb deal. We'll find out against the Titans. I would personally like to try to avoid the entire Broncos situation. Not that I'm advocating for anybody on the Colts over them, but I think this could be really messy against a really good Titans defense. All right, some running backs you might be moving on from. Clyde Edwards-Helaire just continues to see his playing time diminish as they use more of Jerick McKinnon, which is why McKinnon was on the add list and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was on the drop list. Eno Benjamin saw a significantly reduced role with James Conner back, and Nyheim Hines played 4 snaps for the Bills. We expect him to do a little bit more, but was behind Devin Singletary and still behind James Cook. Any of these guys you're considering still holding on to with the chance that things get better down the road?
In full PPR leagues, Nyheim Hines makes the cut. I'd still like to see at least one more game, maybe even 2, especially if Josh Allen isn't on the field for Buffalo, because those dink and dunk passes might be more frequent in Buffalo's offense, and that would benefit Hines.
Yeah, I think Hines would still be third for me in terms of holding on to. One, because of James Conner's injury history, and at any point, Benjamin could be 15 touches again. And then the other is the Chiefs score 4 or 5 touchdowns every week. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be the guy who happens to, like, if you're looking for a guy who might plop into the end zone.
He scored 1 in 4 games, though. That's the problem.
Well, right.
It's so hard to trust
I think
him.
just like him scoring 5 in 3 games before that wasn't indicative of what was coming next. With this Chiefs offense, what he's done in the last 4 isn't as indicative either.
It's really strange why they've just completely gone away from him, because it seemed as if he was playing much better. And the reason that they went, the time that they went away from him was after that Tampa game when he had his best performance maybe of his career, certainly of this season.